Pensateci, miei cari, che cosa fa la legge? Chi sfrutta il tuo lavoro lo protegge.
I think there are very few accidents in cinema. I'm not saying there aren't events that unintentionally end up on camera. I mean, just look at that one scene in Mr. Nanny. Or even that moments of spontaneity or happy accidents during production don't make the final cut. They, of course, do. But more that the choices made by those creating films are usually that. Choices. Choices are constantly being made in the writing of a script, during the production of a film, and during the edit, from big to small. When you are talking about good films, it is more likely than not there is a rationale behind every choice. Maybe it's a scrupulous adherence to historical accuracy, or at the other end of the spectrum, maybe it adds to the mood or the tone or the overarching theme. Again, that's not always true. Sometimes things just happen because they look cool. Look at every film made by Michael Bay. But one of my favourite types of film is the film that asks you to meet it halfway. A film that asks you to play, to think about what it's saying, to dig deeper into its themes, to supplement a narrative with extant knowledge and lived experience. The most interesting art to me will always exist at this intersection of presentation and viewer interpretation. And this could be why I love films like Alice Rohrwacher's 2023 comedy drama La Chimera. A film that has a narrative for the viewer to follow, but also has great treasures buried beneath its surface for anyone with the inclination to dig for them. Now, before I go any further, I should point you toward a video essay by Will Webb on the Curzon YouTube channel that covers this film. Luckily, I saw this film differently to Will, so I'm making this video. But if you want to watch his video, either after you've finished here or before you go on, I've linked to it below. It's a great essay, check it out. La Chimera follows Josh O'Connor's Arthur as he returns from prison to a life of grave robbing with a band of tombaroli, while mourning the apparent loss of his girlfriend, Beniamina. Living in a small shack, he uses an apparently supernatural ability to find Etruscan tombs, with the group selling the grave goods they find to a mysterious art dealer named Spartaco. Forging a connection with a single mother who is, effectively, working as a maid for Beniamina's mother, Arthur finds himself increasingly questioning the morality of the life he has chosen. We'll start with the question of who or what is La Chimera of the title. The most common use in the English language is a creature made up of parts of different animals, and it is the name of the most notable surviving example of Etruscan art, the Chimera of Arezzo. While in Italy, chimera is used to describe an unrealizable fantasy, a pipe dream, and this is clearly the meaning that is primarily intended for the viewer. But I think the title having so many potential meanings is at least part of the point. A chimera can be different things to different people, and a chimera can also be all of those things all at once. In the text of the film, La Chimera is the name Arthur gives to his gift, and I guess he can call it whatever he likes. If I had a magical power, I'd give it a cool name too. I think the secret, if you will, of his power can be seen in the times in the film where he finds a tomb, and a flipping of the shot to highlight those moments. Now, on the one hand, this is a film shot entirely from Arthur's perspective, literally so in the sections where he reminisces about his lost love, but also in scenes like the one where he interacts with the memories of those seen in the film's opening train ride, presenting themselves as ghosts or spirits, asking Arthur where their lost grave goods are. This scene seems to imply that this is what ghosts, phantoms, or spirits truly are: memories. There is no particular reason to believe these people are actually dead, and even less to believe that Arthur has actually taken their valuables. But by having Arthur keep the lighter given to him by the guard, we are also led to believe that this interaction is more tangible than simply a manifestation of his guilt. I feel that Rohrwacher has used this scene to leave us with the feeling that there is no real distinction between a spirit and a memory. And how could you tell the difference, even if there were? So when the camera flips its head in those moments where Arthur finds a tomb, I feel that shows that he is not falling to the ground, but being pulled towards spirits. The memories in the tomb physically manifested by the grave goods, the pieces of themselves that others have left for the departed, treasures sacrificed to their memory. Perhaps Arthur is pulled towards these memories because, as we find him, his whole life has been dedicated to a memory. We are never told exactly what happened to Beniamina, past perhaps the more sensible characters being certain of her death, while both Arthur and her mother, Isabella Rossellini's Flora, have seemingly chosen not to accept that. Flora has chosen a life of interminable waiting, a constant vigil as her world literally falls apart around her. The idea that if you put a bucket to catch water from a leak here, or break a chair for firewood there, eventually everything will just work out. The door flies open, your loved one falls into your arms, and the sun shines through those holes in the ceiling. Everything as it was. Everything as it should be. All you have to do is wait. While Arthur shuffles about his life, unable to commit to anything, a man we are led to believe has more to him than being a grave-robbing drifter living in a shack fashioned from scrap, a slave to the memory of someone lost, which somehow enables him to feel the memories of those others have lost, tugging on a thread he hopes will eventually lead him back to her. For both Arthur and Flora, the grave goods they left for Beniamina, the sacrifices to her memory, are their whole lives. Arthur may eventually find what he was looking for by literally being locked in a tomb with those memories. And maybe that's a happy ending. Maybe La Chimera is a love story with a fairy tale conclusion. Or maybe it's a tragedy, a tale of a man lost to a memory who never finds his way back. Or maybe, like the mythical Chimera, it is both at once. And what you see depends on your perspective. But while this is a film shown very much from Arthur's perspective, we, the audience, aren't bound by that. And neither was Rohrwacher, who has consciously given this story a sense of time, the 1980s, and place, a run-down rural central Italy, the stunning countryside and slightly creaking amenities of Umbria, Lazio, and mainly Tuscany. So, if there are no accidents in cinema, what does choosing this time and this place say? Italy prospered post-war, but the Italian economic miracle was heavily reliant on the manufacturing hubs in the north. And while Milan and Turin grew into large urban sprawls, the flip side was a rural flight, a depopulation of rural areas. While this economic golden age ended in the 1970s, the rural exodus has continued to this day. Adults of working age continue to migrate to areas with greater economic and social opportunity, leaving many small towns in rural areas of southern and central Italy with dwindling and aging populations. And the Tuscany we amble through in La Chimera reflects this reality, presenting a rural Italy that is gorgeous, even with an autumnal chill, but neglected, and with a tranquility that borders on deserted. And the consequence is not just areas slowly dying out, towns dwindling to nothing with fewer and fewer births as those of childbearing age steadily leave. Those left hoping against hope to somehow become a tourist trap or cottage industry. But also culture dying out as older generations slowly die off, unable to pass local traditions onto anyone but the few of working age who have stayed. And is grave robbing perhaps an apt metaphor for that? These timeless antiquities of a culture long gone, reflecting cultures that are in danger of becoming a memory themselves. Their meaning removed as they take flight to capital, to be repurposed, put to work and monetized, leaving behind only broken and run-down tombs, for those there is no use for. In a film full of terrific performances ranging from naturalistic understatement to almost comedic caricature, the Brazilian actress Duarte really stands out. Electric, endearing and magnetic as Italia, and if you think I'm going to overanalyze that name, you betcha, no accents. Some have said Italia is a director insert character, and maybe. And maybe there is functionally no difference between that and my view, which is that she represents Italian neo-feminism. This is a film where a female character literally stares down the barrel of the camera and opines that women used to be in charge in Etruscan times, while she follows a gang of incredibly stupid and violent men looking to loot graves. Its feminist messaging is explicit. Italian feminism has always celebrated the distinctness of women and their contributions to society, as much as it strived for equality of the sexes. This was exemplified by the growth in the 70s and 80s of all-women collectives and cooperatives, and the birth of the Wages for Housework campaign, arguing that childcare and homemaking are important economic drivers on their own, and should be treated as such. So perhaps it is not a surprise that when we meet Italia, she is doing housework for free, her only tangible reward a roof over her head. Perhaps it is also not an accident that she is a single mother, as divorce was a right hard won by the Italian feminist movement in Italy in the 1970s, nor that she ultimately finds happiness and autonomy in an all-female collective. Some may think there is a hypocrisy in Italia being one of the few characters disgusted by grave robbing, and yet perfectly happy to squat inside a disused train station. For me, it is the difference between tending to a ramshackle garden that you stumble upon, filling it with life and giving it purpose, and mining it for all its resources, stripping it bare, robbing it of meaning and value. In contrast to Italia is the most economically powerful woman in the film, the shady art dealer operating under the nom de guerre, Spartaco, a name referencing the ancient warrior state best known today for the film 300, and for being fetishized by the modern far right. But is also tellingly the masculine version of the title ending in the O of Bravo and not the feminine A of Brava. And perhaps it is enough that she feels the need to do this to maintain her power, that she exists in a man's world, and that alone is enough of a statement for Rohrwacher to make. But I can't help but feel there is more to this choice. Could this female authority figure, blonde hair, pantsuits and power stances, concerned with the preservation of culture only as a means to an end, perhaps be a nod to Giorgia Meloni, the first female Prime Minister of Italy elected in 2022, a hard-right nationalist who distances herself from feminism and rails against so-called pink quotas, who uses her femininity primarily to soften authoritarian and anti-immigrant rhetoric, who has slashed social programs and tax breaks that primarily aided women with young children, and who, like Spartaco, initially caused a storm on election by insisting on the masculine version of her title, Il Presidente del Consiglio, as opposed to the feminine La. And could this itself be yet another chimera, a woman who rejects the solidarity of feminism and instead uses and reinforces the machinery of patriarchy for personal gain? It would be easy to point out that La Chimera owes a debt to the style of Italian neorealism, with largely naturalistic filming, lighting and performances, as well as a focus on the working class, and with the playful fantasy of the directors who grew from the ashes of that movement. But by the 1980s, when La Chimera is set, this golden era had largely ended. Cinemas, particularly in isolated or rural areas, began to close, partly due to the increasing ubiquity of television and VHS, and partly due to cost. While there are exceptions, the Italian film industry in the 80s became increasingly focused not on films for that dwindling domestic audience, but on genre cinema that could be exported to other countries. A type of cinema that perhaps didn't need to be particularly well made, as it was not aimed at finding an audience. It was aimed at finding distributors. There were horror films that often pressed at the boundaries of the extreme, as well as titillating pastiches of successful genre films from America, Conan clones like the Ator series, creature features like Monster Shark, and a slew of post-apocalyptic movies of variable quality and even more variable dubbing.
Books. Books. That's what started the whole apocalypse.
And while I don't think there is any sense in saying La Chimera is indebted to that era of quick, cheap and sleazy filmmaking, it is set in the 80s, and like so many Italian films of that decade, it may as well be set after the apocalypse. The primary characters in La Chimera live in the rubble of a once great society, crudely fashioned shacks hanging off the side of a once mighty fort, or in a house that is falling apart and full of holes, needing to break down furniture to keep warm, and presented as salvation, squatting in an old train station, deserted due to trains that no longer run, but a roof and four walls. And what more do you really need in this world? And maybe it is again enough to present the living conditions of these characters in such stark terms, that it speaks to areas and people left behind by modern economic realities. But what if there is yet another meaning, something less literal to be found in the tombs beneath La Chimera? Who else pulls the past from the ground and turns it into money, a finite resource that is nearing depletion, searched for by those who can see beneath the surface of the earth, accumulated by those with capital, sold to us in dribs and drabs as that capital grows and grows? And what will our world look like when it is gone or nearly gone, when all of the tombs have been raided, a future close enough to be within our imagining? Will we be left living in the rotting skeletons of our past glories, scavenging for scrap and hoping for treasures to hawk to those who have insulated themselves from the impact? What is our future going to look like when all of the oil is gone? Plankton and plants buried beneath the ground, dined on by microbes and crushed over time, eventually becoming fossil fuels, tombs that will soon be depleted. There was a scene towards the end of the film as the Tombaroli and the art dealer Spartaco are arguing over the monetary value of the head of a great Etruscan treasure, and in Arthur's eyes they devolve into baying animals, barking and hissing at each other. And could this be a more literal depiction of a chimera? The moment where Arthur sees through the illusion of our societal constructs and bears witness to the reality of what we have become. Could this chimera be us? Man devolving into beast, fighting and posturing like wild animals, over the last scraps of a dying civilization, when we could instead leave it in the ground. Is La Chimera a narrative or an allegory, a love story or a tragedy, down-to-earth social commentary or a world in which magical abilities and ghosts are real, a wistful glance back at what was lost, a critique of damaging economic and social realities in the present, or a film with genuine hope for the future? Like its title, La Chimera is a film that can be different things to different people, and maybe its real magic is in being all of them at once. Thank you very much for watching. If you're listening to this, you made it all the way to the end, well done. If you enjoyed this, maybe check out some of my other videos and subscribe to the channel, because there will almost certainly be more of this type of stuff coming. Don't forget you can like and share the video, that stuff really helps. If you saw this film differently to me or have any other feedback, please comment below. I do read all the comments, I'm not a monster, and I'll try to get back to you as and when I can. Alla prossima, ciao a tutti.